there's more that's coming in, just in terms of, the mass funeral that is set to get underway back at Scenery Park, and just looking at those visuals of the 19 vehicles carrying what are empty coffins. It's a symbolic, ceremony that is to take place at Scenery Park. And I'm just looking at those visuals, Gareth, and I just wonder that these are visuals that the community of Mdantsane, the community of Scenery Park, will never get out of their minds for a very long time, knowing that these are 21 teenagers that have lost their lives, had goals, aspirations. I can imagine families looking to them to perhaps even change certain circumstances in the family, their lives cut short. And we go back just to get a sense of what to expect today. Let's go back to Avi Wemtila, who's where the cortege is at the moment, just to get the very latest. Avi, where I was just saying to Gareth that those are definitely images that the community would not, forget for a very long time. As we've seen, some had been standing on the sides, looking on at that, cortege making its way to the venue.
Heart-shattered residents of Mdantsane watching on this cortege as it makes its way to Scenery Park Stadium. In fact, just yesterday, Tumi, we were at Nompumelelo, where there was a memorial service of 2 of these 21 teenagers. That was the memorial service of Esinako Sanahana as well as Nati Ngoza, who are 2 of grade 12 pupils at Sakikamba Senior Secondary. In all my years as a journalist at Tumelo, I've never seen such devastation. The whole Nompumelelo Community Hall was filled to the brim, and there wasn't a dry eye in sight. Talking from the elderly to the young, from both men and female, everyone just heart-shattered. You could see how loved just those 2 teenagers were, and the way they were described even by the principal, in speaking to the principal of Sakikamba Senior Secondary, on the jovial personalities they had. Not only then the personalities, but the brilliance that they had, Tumelo, where they were top achieving students. You could see the family themselves had a lot to look forward to in the future of those 2 students. So you can only imagine what we're going to see as we head now to the Scenery Park Stadium, where, of course, the rest of the families of the 19 teenagers that will be symbolically laid to rest today will be. You can only imagine the devastation that will be met by, as it's been a heart-shattering week and a bit. Just in Scenery Park, where you see how the community itself is touched, and in fact they've been saying they've had several complaints to Melo about the happenings of Enyobeni Tavern. So they're saying that what's happened, the tragedy that has happened, is not something that they didn't have a foresight of in terms of blowing out the whistle. They've had several complaints to the police. They say they've written affidavits, the neighbors around, just on the noise levels that normally happen at Enyobeni Tavern, going into the early hours of the morning until 6 a.m. we're told. So they're saying that these are concerns that they've raised, and these deaths that you see, the 19 coffins coming now, are something that could have been prevented only if action has been taken. But you can see there is a lack in Tumelo in terms of capacity when it comes to the government-owned, the government entity, the liquor board. Speaking to the chief inspector there, Zola Chikwe, he did tell me that the entity itself only has 2 inspectors for more than 1,000 liquor outlets around the Buffalo City municipality alone. So you can see there's a lack in terms of checking up on these taverns and what happens in these taverns to prevent teenagers going there, to prevent all the mismanagement and the mishaps that we've been hearing of that are happening. In fact, we had a drive around with the Buffalo City municipality and the liquor board, going from one tavern to the other, or just on Monday, and we saw there that how teenagers are just wasting their lives away in the taverns in broad daylight in the afternoon. They're there in their dozens, and what's quite alarming, Tumelo, is that almost every street in Scenery Park has a tavern. There are more taverns than schools. There are more taverns than liquor, than libraries, more taverns than churches, which would suggest that the more recreational activity that the teenagers and the youth there are exposed to are these taverns, something that really needs to be introspected and something that really needs to be tackled. We wouldn't see this procession if these teenagers had something to do. But of course, this cortege now moving at a faster pace, as we do understand the proceedings should be happening. The program officially starting at the Scenery Park Stadium, expected to start in a few minutes' time at about 9 a.m. Hence, you see now this procession making its way there, moving quite speedily. But we do know, of course, it's a symbolic funeral, as we're expecting just this morning in Butterworth, one of these teenagers to be laid to rest privately by the families. One also laid to rest in Mount Coke just yesterday, privately by the families. Then, after this mass symbolic funeral has taken place, we're expecting two more then to be laid to rest privately today. But in the course of the coming days, heading up to Sunday, the remaining number of teenagers will then be laid to rest privately in private ceremonies by their families. Today is a symbolic gesture just to remember the teenagers that were fallen at Enyobeni Tavern in those yet to be explained deaths.
Yeah, and of course, Avi, whereas you were taking us through what is to be expected, we saw images of families already inside the tent at Scenery Park, waiting for the program to start. Gareth, we understand the Premier, Oscar Maboyane, has already made his way inside the tent, awaiting the official arrival of President Cyril Ramaphosa, who will also be giving an address alongside Minister Lindiwe Zulu, amongst others. Police Minister Begicele is also on the program, and that ceremony, rather funeral service, will be taking place starting expectedly at 9 a.m. We're expecting it to officially begin.
Yeah, to take you through the program, what's expected from 9 o'clock, Tumza, as you say, is supposed to get underway. It looks like it is running fairly on time.
Yeah.
They are just a few minutes away. You'll see the cortege on the left-hand side. They're heading to that venue on the right-hand side. At the moment at Scenery Park, are the eNCA Premier arriving a moment ago. That normally indicates the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, just a few minutes away. We often see the Premier of a province arriving just a few minutes before the President of the country does. And we'll be going to a VOA Mtila in a couple of minutes from now as he begins to arrive. Pulile Sweetie Jones, I believe you're still with us as well at the moment, though. You are what viewers are seeing are the visuals on our right-hand side, the view from inside where they're going to be addressing the public. Pule will be coming back to him again a little bit later. That's the podium in terms of where the President is going to be speaking, but just some of the others, as we just take a moment to just orientate everyone joining us this morning. Just after 9 o'clock, the Eastern Cape Province Police Band are going to be opening the ceremony with the national anthem. Yeah,
and I think what's also heartbreaking is that each family will have at least 3 minutes, Garrett, to give an obituary, a very short obituary of, their child, their loved one. As you can imagine, I'm sure for time purposes, hence every, family member is being given 3 minutes each just to talk about, the short life of their loved one. So that is also to be expected, a family representative from each, family of the 21 teenagers coming on. But also, we know that, as mentioned before, the President is also expected to give a keynote. And a lot he has mentioned around the age drinking limit and it needing to be, increased to 21. That was our viewer question this morning, just sort of gauging where South Africans are with what the President had to say. And I just wonder, even with the age limit being increased as a possibility, will that still resolve the issue around underage drinking?
I've seen quite a few of the tweets coming through. Obviously, a lot of those who take part in the viewer question can vote on our website, eNCA.com. But the viewer question, it's creating a debate on social media. The President, in his weekly letter, Tumza, saying the age limit should be considered and increased up to the age of 21, but to the age of 21. Yeah. But to your point, I don't know if it is going to make a difference. And Zizi Kodwa, ANC NEC members, talking about this earlier, unless you implement the laws, right, and you have tavern owners and you have security guards and bouncers and whoever else might be involved, actually sticking to the laws. It doesn't matter whether you make the law 21 years old, 25 years old. In the end, if the laws aren't being upheld, it's not going to make a difference. I mean, you went through the names of all of these teenagers who lost their lives, and you gave their date of birth. We're talking children. Yeah, we're talking children. Born 2008. 2004. I think the oldest was 2001.
Right.
That is still just incredibly young. Yes, of legal drinking limits in this case, but the majority of them were not. So until the laws are put into place, and we've heard from the National Liquor Traders Association that they want to re-look at liquor licenses, the operating hours, where the taverns are in relation to schools,
right,
in relation to homes, hospitals, etc., etc. But until those laws, which are currently in place, are adhered to, I don't know if it's going to make any difference if you change the drinking limit. These were 13, 14-year-olds.
Absolutely.
So if you increase it to 21, now you're going to have 19-year-olds going in. And if they aren't being checked, if they're not being vetted, what difference is it going to make? That's not, for me, the issue. I think it's a good starting point. But I don't know if that's the actual issue.
Right. I mean, I heard also from the UDM representative saying that it should be a multi-stakeholder issue and problem, not necessarily putting the blame on just one particular individual or one organization, from government to liquor outlets, to parents, to community members, to the young, teenagers themselves. How do we all resolve this problem collectively? And I'm sure for the many South Africans watching this on eNCA right now, watching the cortege right now making its way, I'm sure that's the tricking point in all our minds. How do we ensure that what we're seeing on our screens this morning never happens again? Because the truth of the matter is, most people that are watching this have children, they've got nieces, they've nephews, they are godparents, and we all want to protect, the future of this country, which is the youth. So how do we ensure that we do not see these visuals ever again in South Africa? Let me go back to our reporter, Avi Wemdila, a colleague. I understand that you're still with us as we continue to see those visuals of the cortege, leading to Scenery Park. And I just want to know, how far do you think you are, Avi? We're from Scenery Park. It's around 13 minutes to the expected time the program is scheduled to begin. It looks like, as far as family members are concerned, as government officials are concerned. Maybe let me pose this question to Puleli Shwiti-Jones instead, who joins us now. Colleague, from where you are, Pule, what do you see just in terms of, the program obviously starting, but obviously waiting not only for government officials, but also the cortege to arrive? Pule, are you still with us? All right, we're still trying to get a hold of Puleli Shwiti-Jones, struggling to get a hold of him for now, but we'll be sure to get back to him. You can imagine signal issues at this time also posing an issue. But Avi, the same question that I posed to you earlier on, because you're following the cortege to its final destination, which is where the funeral procession will take place, how far do you think you are so far, colleague, just from where you are driving with the cortege there, tracking its movement?
Minutes away, Tumelo. In fact, we should be arriving at Scenery Park any moment now. The stadium itself, we've already turned into the business area of Scenery Park. Now we are just making our way to the stadium. It's not far from where we are, less than a kilometer, in fact. So any moment now we should be heading into the stadium. We're, of course, expecting many dignitaries. I just heard you mention some of those being the Premier, Oscar Mabuyane, who actually caught up with yesterday. I tried to pose some pointed question on even governance, given that there's a lack of capacity, of course, when it comes to government entities such as the Liquor Board. I asked him, does he take responsibility as eNCA Premier and the government itself in some of the debts? And he mentioned that it's collective responsibility, but also pointing it back to communities and the parenting in terms of how 13-year-olds are allowed to be in such establishments. He also mentioned that Enyobeni Tavern itself is a licensed liquor outlet, suggesting that everything above there is bought in terms of the capacity, in terms of the Liquor Board issuing out a license there, but it's the monitoring, of course, that becomes a problem. Another question is how that place is licensed when it is in a residential area. The neighbors have been complaining about it for quite some long time now. So some of those issues coming to the fore there. Also, the conversation that we had with the Premier yesterday, he says he's not a tavern goer himself. He's not a regular tavern goer, so he wouldn't know what happens at these taverns. But of course, that shouldn't be an adequate response, given that you are a Premier, essentially the head of governance in the Eastern Cape. You should be able to know what happens at these taverns that you yourself govern, never mind that you're not a regular frequenter to these taverns, but at least you should have your hands on in knowing if teenagers are allowed inside a tavern or not, as we see that it is something of a norm, given that the majority of these teenagers that passed away there are teenagers. You'd speak to some of the neighbors, Tumelo, you'd find out from them that it's a known thing that in Scenery Park, eNCA Tavern is a venue for the teenagers. In fact, you get turned away if you're above the age of 20, some of these neighbors are telling us, where there is another establishment, Kwamguni, which is for the adults then, those that are above 18 and above. So that could raise eyebrows on its own in terms of what has been happening. Why aren't police clamping down on such establishments? That could prevent the cortege that we see here and the deaths that we see here. But of course, now we're getting so close. We're literally meters away, some 100 or so meters from where I'm standing. I can even see the tent that is the stadium. We should turn in any second now, as we even see helicopters hovering above. You can imagine the motos and the cars that are outside, in the dozens, as we now about to approach the stadium, Scenery Park Stadium, where this symbolic funeral will be happening for the 19 teenagers, of course, that passed away just over a week ago at eNCA Tavern, which itself is not far from where we are. It is some 500 or so meters away. As we now drive in, I can even see there are ushers on the ground here. Of course, a lot of police presence on the ground. I can see a couple of nyalas just as we make our way inside here at the stadium itself. Of course, bidding farewell to these 19 teenagers, as we do understand 2 have been laid to rest. 1 yesterday, 1 this morning, and another 2 of these teenagers will be laid to rest later on today, with the remaining being laid to rest in coming days from Thursday to the Sunday, which will exactly mark 2 weeks, Tumelo, since these 21 teenagers lost their lives at eNCA Tavern here in Scenery Park. Of course, those questions still lingering, answers still needed, Tumelo, to exactly what led to the deaths of these teenagers. I guess that's the most devastating part of all of this. All of the interactions that we've been doing, my colleague Neba Ntlanganiso and myself on the ground, speaking to numerous parents here. The one thing, Tumelo, that they've all been crying about and really wanting are just answers to what happened to their children, what led to their deaths. They're still none the wiser, Tumelo, as of course some of them have already laid their children to rest. They're saying that they'll only be at peace after they get those answers. Of course, we're hoping that at least they'll get some sort of direction today, as they were promised by the South African Police Service, the Chief Inspector Investigator, some 2 days ago at the Community Hall in Scenery Park, where they were once again called there in a meeting which involved the Portfolio Committee on Youth, Women and Children, as well as some of the Buffalo City Municipality officials, including the Deputy Mayor, Princess Faku. We do understand Social Development was also there. They were assured that they'll be visited house to house, where they'd be given more information on exactly what happened. Given that yesterday we were at the memorial service of Esina Kosanachana as well as Nati Ngoza, speaking to some of the parents there, they said that that interaction hadn't happened as yet. Currently at the moment, we are driving in the Scenery Park Stadium, coming in now, of course, as we're expecting the 19 coffins, which are empty, given that it's a symbolic funeral, to make their way inside here. Final goodbyes here for the community, which has been heart-shattered. We've been with this community for over a week now, and the answers are what's needed, Tumelo, to what exactly led to these dates. We're arriving, of course, now, and there's a heavy police contingency here, as you can expect the president to be part of those that are inside here, given that he's expected to deliver the eulogy at about 11 today. But I can see even the Deputy Mayor, Princess Faku, on the ground here as they come bid farewell to these 19 teenagers here. As you see, the motos of AVBOB carrying the coffins of the teenagers coming in now, making their way inside the stadium here. We're expecting the program to officially begin at 9 a.m.
Yeah, and of course the beginning of that program may be just the beginning of, saying goodbye to their loved ones, Aviwe and Gareth. I suppose that's why answers are needed desperately by family members right now for closure.
They are, and it was a viewer that I think spoke to us earlier when you were talking about the toxicology reports as well and the chemical poisoning. That's all good and well while those investigations are ongoing, but we were hearing those allegations from the DJ. Remember the DJ you spoke to, saying that there was security. That's correct. Sorry, I forgot the name. Thank you. He was saying that security were closing doors. Right. They were locking doors. There's still all those answers. And you can expect, I imagine, while you have the police minister giving a message of support, while you have the president of the country, the families, I'm sure, while they do appreciate this outpouring of grief from the country and support, they want the answers in the end. Because I think the saddest part, apart from when you read the names out, which was beautiful, and we must do that again today, and the ages, is their photos.
Oh, yes.
I'm seeing teenagers in a netball uniform, in a school uniform, in a sporting uniform. These are young kids at school that were probably just trying to enjoy themselves, albeit in an area where they shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
That may be true, but in the end, teenage angst, teenage fun, even though it was illegal in this case, should never, ever, ever have ended in a situation like this. If you've just joined us, we are heading up for 9 o'clock. We were expecting to see the President, President Ramaphosa, arriving. I didn't catch a glimpse of him. We know the police minister, though, is there, Tumza. We also know that the police commissioner arriving a little while ago. I haven't caught sight of the President, but that's almost secondary to what we're looking at the moment. One of the 19 empty caskets arriving there this morning. Let's go back to, I think we have Pule Letswiti Jones, who's with us once again. We lost you a little bit earlier, Pule. You've been at Scenery Park the whole morning. Let's come to you first. Where are you on the grounds, and what are you seeing, if you can hear me?
Yeah, definitely, Gareth. I'm by the entrance, just where one of the hearses have arrived. We're about to see the empty coffin entering into the venue, into the marquee rather, and like you just mentioned earlier, it's a symbolic tribute, of course, to the family as well. We had, of course, anticipated that the President would be making way anytime from here. We're being told that he had arrived. In fact, I'm just trying to, hop over to see if he actually had arrived, but we've seen the Premier of the province, Oscar Mabuyane, and of course the police minister and the police commissioner, General Fanima Somola, also being here as well, and of course the Minister of Home Affairs, Arno Twaledi, amongst the delegation that has made way into the marquee already. We saw the families as well that have made their way into the marquee. I'm just going to ask my colleague Mohammed, just so you can see some of the family members who are coming in. We saw some scholars also making their way into the marquee, perhaps maybe those representing the schools of those who had actually far prone to the tragic incident that had happened. And this is where we are. It's been quite a busy morning inside, which has been uplifted by the songs of praise inside this marquee. Just on that shot you can see these are some of the family members now making their way into the marquee. Gareth, they're not the first. Some have already made way. I must quite say and commend some of the family members and officials that they are adhering to the time protocol, respecting time, and ensuring that the program isn't delayed. We had been told by some of sources, of course, close to the presidency, that the president had left the Gauteng province around 7:30 and would be making his way here. Perhaps we could be expecting him any time from now, just about maybe 10 to 15 minutes. We've been keeping tabs as to where he is, and early on we had thought that he had arrived, but it seems as though he was just a bit delayed. But apart from that, these are just some of the family members and friends are making their way into the marquee, joining those who have actually arrived. And I think we're just waiting for the president's presence before the events can get underway. Like I just said earlier on, we've seen some of the government officials who had actually made their way into the venue.
Right, Pule, you are joined by Mfundo now. I've joined you just now. I just wanted to find out that insofar as the families are concerned, I understand that they've just made their way in. Is there any perhaps difficulty in entering the sports ground for any of the extended family members? Bule, I don't know if you can hear me. It's Mfundo. I've just taken over. Just trying to establish that. Has it been quite easy for all members of the public to make their way into the sports ground?
Sorry, Mfundo, my connection is a bit bad here, but it's been quite a very easy, smooth process of having allowed some of the family members and, of course, friends to make their way into the venue. Perhaps what we can also highlight is that there's been some members of the South African Police Service to ensure that there is tight security and that the situation of crowd management is in place and that does not spiral out of control, particularly knowing that the president will be making his way here any moment from now. We've seen the sweeping process having taken place, and what we're actually seeing now is a program actually getting underway where some of the coffins will be brought into the marquee. Quite importantly to do mention that these are the empty coffins, and of course this being a symbolic tribute as well to those miners who've lost their lives, and we've seen the family members as well who've actually made their way inside the marquee. What we're seeing now is the coffins being ushered by some of the members of the religious groups as well, which includes the priests as well. And we have seen some of the officials who have made their way into the venue thus far. I think what we're just waiting for now for the president to actually enter inside the marquee, and we'll be seeing the venue, or rather the program, finally getting underway. We are currently outside just where the entrance is situated, where we've been seeing some of the movements of some of the members of the public and, of course, family members making their way into the marquee in Mfundo.
Okay. And then can you just talk to us about some of the dignitaries that have actually arrived? Who have you been able to spot so far?
Yeah, man, we've managed to speak to the police minister, and of course the officials of the party representatives from the UDM, as well as the Deputy Minister of State Security, and you know, one view that they've all shared is that there should be a look into the legal age drinking threshold, which remains a concern, saying that this should be looked into. This also we're seeing right now the Speaker of Parliament making her way into the venue now, accompanied by other delegates as well. But just to go back to what I was saying, Mfundo, there's been views around that issue that has to be re-looked into, particularly around how many community members have described that certain taverns in this communities have been warned about having minors or children who are under the age restriction limits entering their taverns and, of course, engaging in activities of drinking alcohol. And this has been a devastating, tragic crisis that many community members are saying they've been reporting to officials of SAPS, alleging that some of these incidences have been not recognized, and in fact also accusing officials of turning a blind eye to these complaints. And fast forward to about a few days ago, this was the tragic incident that actually unfolded. And there's been calls by members of parliament as well as some of the officials in government to say that there should be an issue that looks into this matter, particularly around the idea of recreational facilities having to be brought in now to ensure that some of these minors have a place for hope and not having to look to the left where they would go to taverns as well, which is not their place of stay.
Pule, let's quickly try and listen in now. We see that the proceedings are in fact getting underway. Thank you very much for that.
of us. Ne?
getting there.
That's koko kulungileyo ngaza usizi lwam lavuka. Kanjalo uYehova ubenika ikwanguye nothathileyo igama likaYehova malidunyiswe.